Man, it's already week 10 of the season. Let's break it down on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. Today is Friday, May 26th. I am Frank Samfeld, joined by Scott White, and let's get into our Week 10 preview. Starting with the schedule, 8 teams have 7 games next week, 20 teams have 6 games, and 2 teams have 5 games. That is the Royals and the Cardinals. Starters sit these fringe 2-star pitchers, and up first is Kodai Senga, facing the Phillies and the Blue Jays, both at home.
Tough matchups and a pitcher who's been pretty unreliable overall, specifically in terms of walks. Kodai Senga has done a pretty good job keeping runs off the board considering all the walks, but I think this is a points league only choice for this week with those tough matchups. Probably going to do too much whip damage for Roto.
Domingo Germán in his first start back from suspension at the Mariners and at the Dodgers.
Yeah, I'm thinking no. Obviously, there have been times this year where we've recommended him, but you got to think they'll have a close eye on him for sticky substances, and was that fueling his success before the suspension? I'd rather steer clear of Domingo Germán.
JP France has done some interesting things since being called up to the Astros. He is home against the Twins and Angels next week.
Yeah, I don't trust him yet. I'd pass.
Yusei Kikuchi is still 81% rostered, likely because he is a SPARP on CBS. He is home against the Brewers and at the Mets.
I could see doing it in the points league if you want to take advantage of that relief pitcher eligibility, but he's been pretty rough lately, so I'm choosing not to.
Let's get into the 2-star pitchers to add and stream next week. This is a pretty fun group here, Scotty.
Yeah, so begin with Michael Kopech, who's dominated his last 2 outings. All of the all the interesting 2-star pitchers have one really good matchup, one really bad matchup this week. Same for Kopech, Angels, but also Tigers. If he picks up where he left off, though, it may not matter who he's facing. That fastball is just sizzling right now. I also like Bobby Miller. He had a great debut against the Braves, and he gets the Nationals and Yankees this week. So hopefully he can continue the good pitching. Brian Bayo's been on a nice run over his last 5 starts. He gets the Reds and the Rays. If nothing else, he keeps the ball on the ground about as well as anybody. So hopefully that'll limit the damage in that Rays matchup. Going a little further down the list here, these are more points league only recommendations. Logan Allen at Baltimore, at Minnesota. That Minnesota matchup a little better than it appears because they're so bad against lefties. Cal Quantrill also at Baltimore, at Minnesota. He's not a lefty, of course, but he tends to throw a lot of quality starts. So if you're looking to hopefully get an extra one of those in a points league, you could look to Cal Quantrill.
And if you miss out on the 2-star pitcher, Scott, I see you have 5 single start streamers for week 10 as well.
Yes, we got James Paxton against the Reds. He's given up some hard contact, but overall, I like what he's done coming back from Tommy John surgery, and that's a good matchup for him. Miles Michaelis at Pittsburgh, believe it or not, he all of a sudden has a sub-2 ERA, 1.98 ERA in his past 6 starts. Still giving up hard contact, still not getting a lot of strikeouts, so I don't trust Miles Michaelis necessarily, but at Pittsburgh, I think that's a favorable enough matchup to ride the hot hand. Edward Cabrera against the A's. Hopefully he can keep the walks down. And also Brandon Pfaadt against the Rockies. Risky play there, obviously, but Rockies on the road. That's a really good matchup, and Pfaadt's looked a little better recently.
Let's move over to the hitters. Best hitter matchups for next week: the Marlins, Braves, Rockies, Brewers, and Giants. The worst hitter matchups: Yankees, Tigers, Angels, Astros, and Reds. Shout out to Jorge Soler. Well, actually, shout out to Scott for telling you to pick up Jorge Soler. But, man, if you picked him up for this week, just enjoy the ride because the Marlins have the number 1 hitter matchups next week as well. Scott, your favorite sleeper hitters for week 10?
So you mentioned the Giants have the 5th best matchups. I like a lot of Giants this week. Lamont Wade, particularly since they have 5 righties on the schedule. He has more walks than strikeouts against righties. He's been a disciplined hitter overall, but I think he's one of the more under-rostered hitters right now, 43%. That's Lamont Wade. His teammate Michael Conforto, just red hot. hitting a lot of home runs. He makes for a good play. Also, J.D. Davis and Casey Schmidt, I think, are fine choices to start. Marcell Ozuna has had a monster May after a dreadful April, and he's back to playing every day for the Braves. And we might as well ride this for however long it lasts, especially with him having the second best hitter matchups this week. 3 games against the A's pitching staff. The Marlins also have 3 games against the A's pitching staff. Jorge Soler's too rostered to recommend here now, but Brian De La Cruz isn't. And particularly in a 5 outfielder league, you might want to look to him again. The Twins have 7 games, pretty good matchups, and only 1 lefty on the schedule. So I think Edward Julian, Alex Kirilloff both make for decent plays. And finally, Owen Miller. Been very hot for the Brewers. They have the 4th best matchups. I don't think he's going to be a long-term option for you, but he's eligible just about everywhere. And as I said, hot hand player right now.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.